and we are streaming. Sorry for the delay, folks who might be watching online. Had a little technical setback, but we're in and live.
We're in delay. All right, December 17th, MBTA Right Oversight Committee meeting. Let's come to order. First item on the agenda is public comments. Any public comments? No. Next item on the agenda is discussion about the safety report that was presented last week at the Fiscal and Management Control Board. Was there a particular way that you wanted to approach that, or just ask people for their comments or questions?
I was thinking of any particular area in which another committee member would want us to follow up, or any particular area of concern,
okay,
or anything where we felt further action by us or some action by us was particularly measurable. Because that's one of the things that I've found contributes to greater success on our part is if we have a goal in mind that can be measured for success. But since there were so many elements of the safety report that seemed to be organizational in nature and maybe only could be addressed by the governor's office perhaps, or legislature, I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe I'll just say that was my theory and how I want to go from there. Maybe we can discuss even that. I know it's a little nebulous, I admit.
So by goals you mean, are there, do people, is the question, do people have things that they'd like to monitor or track that are measurable?
Yeah, exactly right. Okay. Yeah, are there any specific aspect of the safety report where we feel particularly compelled as individual committee members, or even just interested in ensuring that those recommendations in that report are followed, or maybe if there aren't any specific recommendations from that safety report, should we come up with our own set of recommendations for those problem areas? And again, how can we be measuring success on that?
Got it. Any other ways of structuring it, or things that people want to?
I'm not up to speed on the report, but what comes to mind is comparative analysis of different systems. I realize that the way information is made available by different systems is changing, in part in response to having better kind of customer-facing screens and stuff, but whenever I dive into...
Sorry, when you say systems, do you mean technical systems at the MBTA, or transit systems around the country, or something else?
Well, in the first case, I mean transit systems around the country. So it used to be pretty easy to go to the National Transit database and just compare really simple metrics as a starting point. I've been trying to do that in a while, but my sense when I look online, there's a lot of good information online, but for the state in different areas, including transportation. But it takes a while to dive down into it, and it's as if they assume somebody's just looking for one piece of data instead of a systematic presentation. And I think it's pretty helpful to look at the systematic presentations that compare, ridership costs, maintenance, those kinds of things. And I haven't tried too hard to do that, but every time I just kind of tip my toe into it, it seems like it's more about flipping through electronic screens and just diving down and then back up and diving down and back up. It's not the way things used to be presented in, I guess, like big annual reports that are easy to flip through, whether online in PDF or spreadsheet or printed. It just seems like the information is being presented with an assumption that people are looking for one fact instead of a systematic set of conditions. And it is helpful to know how Boston compares to other systems. Usually it compares pretty well on ridership and things like that. But we're not the only ones that have these issues. And with specific reference to the state of good repair or lack thereof, I just think we're way too shy on raising funding for transit. Just way too shy. And lately I've been using Seattle. Light rail in Seattle was a result of the Alaska earthquake, which collapsed their underground highway that went through Seattle, Brigham bridges. And they had a fierce debate about whether to rebuild the highway through the city or to start transit. And they decided to start transit. And it was a little slow starting. They had a massive drilling machine that got stuck for like 6 months, Big Bertha. But each phase, they just gained momentum. And surprisingly, about a year ago, the citizens voted for phase 3 of light rail, $56 billion. A very detailed program, just transit for Seattle, which is a comparable city to us. We don't do that kind of stuff. They've got it from the airport to downtown to UW Seattle. I don't know how many folks are familiar with the layout. They've obviously got similar issues to us, mostly because of software rather than biotech, but between Microsoft and Amazon and a couple other companies, they've got drastically increased employment downtown without a transit system, and we've got housing affordability problems, same things that we have. But the willpower to put it on the ballot, whether the citizens want to contribute $56 billion to phase 3 of this project, and they just vote and pass it, does not seem to me like that would happen here. I'll stop there.
Is that $56 billion over what time period?
I might have a page here, but
10?
I think these are, well, I don't know that it's 20 years, but it's a long period.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out what it is per year.
I was there just after it collapsed.
Do they vote on the county level? How does it vote?
Well, I think it's regional because it's CTAC. It goes from Seattle to, it actually across state.
Right. Because one of the problems here is just, it's like, in order to do anything substantial, you have to do it on the state level.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, the MPO is like 100 or 101 towns,
Yeah. Well, Washington State's a lot bigger than Massachusetts.
Right.
This is really just the metro area.
Right. But it's just easier to a certain extent to get one city to vote for something than it is to get.
Yeah, but it's not one city. It's like the MPO region, the equivalent of the MPO region.
Well, how many towns in that region?
Well, it goes all the way to Tacoma, Washington.
The question is how many towns or cities in that
Might
region?
be county level, because it's
Well-
King County.
Yeah, King County's a lot of it. I don't think that's it. I think some of it may be legacy. We started a long time ago, and that may be an issue. But I think, and lacking counties may be part of the issue because we tend not, the counties are what equalizes income across municipalities, and without counties, that's lacking here.
Right.
You know, where there's effective counties, they pay for the schools, the transportation, all the big infrastructure, so it matters less whether you're in Lincoln or Wellesley or East Boston or Chelsea or Lynn. But I think there's we have as progressive a philosophy as anyone in the country, but I just don't think there's money where that philosophy, to match that philosophy.
Right. Well, it's just a matter of how to, get it to, how to get the political will. That's not the right way to say it. It's, how do you functionally do it on a political level? Because we have to do things as towns, or we have to do things as states, as a state. There's only so much the towns can do before you're outside of your bounds, and you have to do it at a state
All
level.
the big stuff the towns can't do.
Right. And so then we have to do it at a state level. Now it's like, okay, it's so much harder because you're not simply trying to deal with solving issues that affect Boston and the Boston MPO. You now have to design some legislation, that.
Right. Well, we had two big areas here, and some of you, Karen, you were probably here. I was in Maine, but when they did the Boston Transportation Plan Review, they decided to effectively cease major investment in highways and invest in the red line and the orange line. That was a pretty big deal under Governor Sargent, and then the big dig was a pretty big deal too. But I think we've lost our courage for that, and I think the big dig has something to do with it.
100%. There is a large project fatigue that's going to haunt the state for decades to come because of the big dig. No one wants a multi-million dollar project, and there's just no faith that it's going to be executed on time or on budget, so everybody's gun shy on it. I think the other aspect of it is it's a hard comparison. Adding a third light rail line, it's shiny and new. You can go to ribbon cutting ceremonies and get people excited about adding transportation to new areas. The investment we need to make to replace ailing rail ties or improve safety standards or things like that is you don't get politicians to show up at ribbon cutting for track replacement. It's like changing the everywhere. It's a necessary evil. We need to spend more money on it, but it's not a sexy thing to fund. So it's hard between that and big dig, a combination of those two things where if you don't have a public who's gun shy on big projects, and you have a backlog of just kind of hygiene projects, it's hard to get any kind of excitement out of people to say, let's throw a whole lot of money at that.
Yeah, I know. I just throw one other but shorter issue of context, and I probably mentioned it before. I don't fly except to go to conferences I have to go to, but I see the world at random, and I especially find Europe to be an interesting comparable for us, because it's not like China. They're not building 300-mile-an-hour bullet trains and connecting all the big cities. But I know we've gone on. I'm sorry. Just take 2 seconds. But I'm just blown away by the Netherlands last summer, and I've been in many of the countries in Europe to go to conferences. But the Netherlands does not have there's no technology that we can't do here. They have great electric trains between cities. They have great in-city transit, very high walking and biking and light rail, and the utilization is just staggering. And the quality of life is what people say here, but it's that way on the ground there. For pretty much everybody. And I'll stop. I'm sorry I went on so long.
Oh, well, I wanted to nudge back to safety report.
Would you mind if I add just one thing, because I thought what Craig just said, you might have just went for another 90 seconds or so. You touched on a nerve for me, because talking about the new and shiny and how we in Massachusetts are going to have an aversion to large-scale projects for decades, I agree, but at the same time, I think the Green Line extension actually shows a little bit of how some faith perhaps can be restored in the fact that there was a big hoopla, multi-billion-dollar project. It rapidly seemed to it seemed to be spiraling over budget. I won't say out of control, but I was about to say that. I'll hold that back. But then there was a put on the brakes, reevaluate, very publicly. It was a big mea culpa in a way that I don't think could have been done with the big dig, because once you really got underway, I mean, you really couldn't not finish it. But with the Green Line, it was, oh, wait a minute, there's no reason why we can't stop, reevaluate, proceed with better understanding of what's critical, what's not, and then go forward. I think that was a good turning point, and maybe we can leverage that experience. If as a whole, we want to try to...
Where I disagree with them is if I'm a casually interested person in transportation, not us, not somebody who saw the nuance of that, all I'm hearing is the freaking rate, they've done the Green Line extension for 15 years, it's taken 15 years, and it's true. Yes, we did that what we talked about, where we went down a path of building Taj Mahal stations and really spent a whole lot of money, and then we stopped, and reevaluated, but it was the right thing to do. I'm not sure I would hold up, I wouldn't guess I was too big of a pat on the back to say, hooray, we're really good at course correcting, so the next project, I'm sure we're going to be totally wrong, but we're good at course correcting, so it's okay. We didn't prove the evidence together deep, strong, not...
That's a very good point, yeah.
The only thing you do we have done, or we are doing, and I think it's going to depend on how the jury's still out. We have 3 cars out there, but the orange line and red line replacement is a once in a generational kind of thing, and that is a spot where we are getting all brand new, and that's because it's easier to get new subway cars than it is to get new rights of way to expand transit, to replace it. At least that's a kind of shiny, you can go to Roman Guides.
It's all Blue Line's pretty shiny too.
Yeah. Well, don't forget, there are new routes. SL3, last I heard, the SL3 was a huge bang for the buck in terms of what it actually cost to do it versus, the long-term.
This is totally. So to Chelsea?
Yeah.
Are there actual numbers up on that, or are they?
From what I've been seeing, yeah. When I say seeing, not seeing the numbers, but from seeing the people that are actually taking it. Yeah, I know, nothing is perfect.
Well, I think
Right, it can always be higher.
the big safety thing, that was actually supported by everyone at the meeting was that we do need to spend more money on operations.
Yes.
So perhaps one way to measure that is, I haven't read all the report, but to see if they give numbers on what departments have too few employees, and what the number of employees are in those departments, and then track to see if they actually hire, more people in those departments. So yeah, but we've been aware of the deficit operations.
I just wanted to add on to that. Both headcount and just dollars budgeted towards safety, either programs or, besides headcount, dollars are another way to measure that.
Yeah, but I think more so headcount. That's where the real main deficit's been in headcount. So yeah, I mean, because I think if you simply put the dollars there, you don't have the headcount, you'll end up kind of where you are now, being like one of the reasons we can't really get. Well, we've gotten better at getting capital out of the door, but we've had to hire more people to get the capital out of the door. And when we had the big situation in 2015 after the snowstorm, DeLeo didn't want to give us more money because there was just all this capital money there, but we've been slashing headcount, and so we didn't really have the means to get the money out of the door, and we rightfully did not spend the money because we couldn't spend it responsibly, and so the team was seen as being a bad actor, for lack of a better word, because it had all this capital money that wasn't spending. And because now it's got money, well, of course it doesn't need operating money, so we ain't getting more operating money, but we continue slashing, or outsourcing, and the outsource, you kind of lose a lot of the expertise in-house. The argument there is that, well, you can't be an expert at everything, but this is a big organization. It doesn't need to be an expert at everything, but it needs to have a lot of expertise in-house that you can count on regularly. And just as a society too, it's just that we just stop this race to the bottom, where because one entity has been able to essentially enslave, for lack of a better word, its employees, and give them nothing, after they leave. Then everyone kind of looks at anyone that gets any benefits and go, you shouldn't have that because I don't have that, So it wasn't get straight a little late from safety, but we just need to have more people in operations, and maybe even measure things other than just safety, like maybe productivity, because I think we get a bigger technological account, you might see some increased productivity, but also be prepared that it's going to take a little while to maybe see some benefits from this too.
One of the takeaways that I got from the safety report, which I admit I also haven't finished reading either, I'm about halfway through it, maybe 60% through. One of the takeaways was that there's continued brain drain where the veteran, long-time experts have been retiring, not necessarily out of frustration or early buyouts, but just out of attrition, and that's been taking a lot of long-term experience in the areas of safety away. So if not necessarily even just technical aspects. I believe that there was a call out in the report of how just a safety culture, which used to be fostered by the older staff, the more well-respected, with, let's say, decades of experience of, oh, hey, well, if you see that problem, it's less pronounced because you don't have the sort of elder mentors involved with the front lines of the operations that include safety. So I don't know if there's a solution for that other than better knowledge transfer when there's turnover of senior people.
I was just kind of curious, so before the report, was there anyone, even with everything that's happened lately, did you get on a train or a bus and go, I'm really worried that something's going to happen? Or were you like, okay, well, I'm just kind of playing the odds here, there's a 1 in 10,000 chance something's going to happen, but because the odds are so low, I feel relatively safe, Because that's not the case with me. Whereas every time I get in the car, it's like, oh my goodness, it's like there's like a 1 in 10,000 chance or whatever that something's going to happen. And it's like I can't get out of the car fast enough. I just can't because it's like, and especially now when it's like you never know if the person in your car is going to pick up the phone. It's like I'm hands-free, because I'm hands-free, I'm safe. I'm not focused on what I'm doing. I'm hands-free and I'm safe. Or someone else in another car is doing the same thing, and I just don't feel safe. But I've never gotten on a bus or a train and felt, if I get there, I kind of beat the odds. I just never felt that way, So I'm glad they did this, but I just wasn't feeling unsafe, and I think it's good any group, kind of says, okay, we've had a set of bad experiences, let's see if there's something systemic going on here, and so I applaud them for doing that, and hopefully we'll act on what we do, but I don't see it as a crisis.
Well, I disagree. I think the red line derailment showed it was a crisis, because that little part should have been taken care of.
Yeah, I don't, as a I mean, to me, there's not a bright line between safety and reliability.
Right.
And I was much more worried about reliability
Yeah.
problems than about death or injury
Yeah.
problems. And those aren't totally separate.
Right.
But they aren't necessarily conjoined either.
Well, here, I think it was fortunate that there weren't at least severe injuries from these various derailments and,
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing about any severe injuries from any of the derailments that came around. Or the Orange Line fire, but to some extent you can say that's just lucky that in all these derailments that there wasn't, that there weren't injuries or deaths.
Yeah, the last red line one, that was a luck one, so I agree.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that what most daily riders notice is just inconvenience of, things being delayed because of needed maintenance that hasn't been done regularly. I notice it all the time. It doesn't bother me. If I'm not in a hurry to get somewhere on deadline, it doesn't bother me, but boy, there's a lot of delays in the system now where I travel.
But in addition to the derailments, and here I can argue the other side of what I just, it's like the fires, the fires related to bad wiring, that's worrisome, that's certainly a safety issue, maybe not as glamorous as a derailment, or let me rephrase that, not glamorous is the wrong word, not as spectacular as a derailment, but every bit as likely, to cause harm to people if people get trapped in a train that fills up with smoke, maybe we have the safety mechanism so that doesn't happen, that the doors will open, they can get out, but still, who wants to have to go through a smoky tunnel? And those are, our power issues have been around for a while. It's been underfunded for a long time. I think the Focus 40 did make that a priority, and I do see some things in the capital budget that makes me confident they're going to start dealing with it sooner rather than later.
I am amazed there at the safety on the buses. When I'm on a bus and I can see how congested it is, and car drivers are doing really weird things and pulling out when they shouldn't, and parking in the bus stops and there's snow. I'm really incredibly impressed by the bus driver's safety record. And there's bicyclists doing the wrong things occasionally, and pedestrians. It's pretty
Didn't you
impressive.
remember Dave Carney said that most of the suits against the T come from bus passengers?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Is that
From the
right?
passengers. Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
Said there
Yeah.
were more claims.
Yeah, 70%. He said 70% of all MBTA payouts on bodily injury and property damage is from bus-related incidents.
Yeah, I can believe that.
But-
I'm still impressed.
Oh, yeah, me too. And that being said, 70% of all payouts being bus-related doesn't mean that the buses are unsafe.
No.
It just means that there's much more interaction between buses and other people, vehicles, things in the environment that are variable. That was my take.
Yeah, there's 1,000 buses.
Yeah, I mean, the last time that a truck or a car collided with a red line train was never? I mean, that might actually be something that like in a yard, but I mean, in all seriousness, you don't have collisions with red line, orange line, blue line. Maybe once in a while there'll be an accident between other trains, God forbid, but you don't have
That's how we
cars and
That's how it's usually done in bad hamlins, we just match our, we just.
Well, yeah, I mean, Maritime line, green line above ground, yeah, I mean, those are all areas where.
Go with that, you know.
Yeah.
Would be interesting to
You got
see-
two radars, you got your own option for it.
It'd be interesting to see what the stats were, for the B and the C line.
Yep.
But along those lines, though, Dave did say, that they did not do the safety analysis of the buses.
Right.
And so he felt we really should do a safety analysis of the buses, and so we could, implore the FMCB, to do that. And another thing too, I'd be interested in seeing an analysis of what these payouts were related to, these injuries on buses were, because if a lot of them are due to people getting thrown around on buses, that could argue.
Oh, yeah.
That could argue for having,
But it's just bus, it's in the bus category, it's not passengers riding the bus, it could be, if a bus hits a bicyclist, that's a suit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see what it's related to, because if it is passenger related, and it's due to maybe people not seated,
Right.
that could make an argument for having, more buses so that people, aren't standing as much, because I try not to stand on a bus because it's like a bus can come to a short stop because someone stops out in a crosswalk all of a sudden.
Speaking of standing, there's a particular conductor, who I happen to know, but he gets flack all the time for his insistence, putting it mildly, that people on his commuter rail train take a seat.
Yeah.
He won't let someone stand, even if they want to stand, if there's an available seat, even if it's in the middle of three. And
Whoa.
Yeah, because it is the safest place to be, is
Yeah.
sitting. And he doesn't care. I mean, he'll tell people, no, on my train, if there's a free seat, you're going to sit in it. Only when all the seats are available, then you can stand if you want to. But otherwise, sit. And he's gotten complaint letter after complaint letter, but he basically says, I'm the conductor, it's my train, the safest place is sitting. And as far as I understand it, Keolis, to their credit, is sticking with him, because if there's available seats, sitting is safer.
Yeah.
Case closed. That actually does bring me to Keolis, but I don't want to completely. Well, it's coming up on 5 of 6. I mean, there's still a lot more that we could discuss about the MBTA safety report. If you haven't read the report, and you can, please do, particularly the areas about the lack of a safety culture. There's quite a bit in the report talking about things like the Green Line high-speed derailment that happened, what was it, the very weekend before the Red Line derailment? And the example talks about how I'm going to quote right here just for a couple sentences, the case 4624-4 was opened by the MBTA on July 9th, 2019, and it was subsequently submitted to the DPU and approved to be closed approximately 1 month later on August 9th. The rapid closure of this corrective action does not provide sufficient time for staff to monitor that these activities are being repetitively performed and verify whether or not it's having a desired effect. In other words, it's, okay, we're all set, close the case, move on, without a long, sustained view of success of changing that speeding mentality. Or even the mentality of reporting when even a fellow operator or a fellow employee is concerned.
Is there a point person for the safety report? Somebody that has been delegated to make sure that the safety recommendations are implemented? Does that person have a name?
Well, in the report itself, it said that ultimately the responsible party is the general manager.
Yeah, but he or she's got too many things to do. There needs to be a person whose only job is to go after all the safety recommendations.
I thought the recommendation was to hire someone for that position.
I believe that's the case, yeah.
There's an
There's a-
executive summary and.
Oh, okay, so maybe we can kind of ask,
Well, it's another thing to measure, it's just
I'm
the
sorry.
hiring. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
It's another measurable thing, is that person hired?
Right.
Not just overall
Mhm.
head count, but.
Yeah,
Or is there a process for that person to be hired? A request for
Yeah.
people to sign up?
yeah, the safety management, according to the report again, the safety management system requires that there be an accountable executive to be accountable for ensuring the agency's safety management system is effectively implemented. It's typically the head of the organization, i.e. the GM, but as the report says, in the last 9 years, there have been 9 GMs, and again, quoting the report, the incumbent GM has only been in the position since January 2019. The individual does not possess in-depth transportation operations and safety knowledge.
Right. Can we send a letter to the FM, whatever?
We said anything we want to.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, the following paragraph right after that
Yeah.
starts off saying, the FMCB would also benefit from having individuals with operations and safety skill sets to its ranks.
No, that's good, but we need a person with a name and a job title to implement the safety report and go after each of the thing and get statistics, is that group that's supposed to be doing such and such, doing such and such? Anybody here go to the FMCB?
Oh, they're all online. Yeah.
No, I meant if you go and make a comment, if somebody, I used to go to them, I can't anymore.
You can go, I don't go, I can go.
No, I don't have the time to go anymore.
We said, does anyone meet?
I'm sorry?
Your question was, does anyone go? That was a present tense question.
No, I meant anybody here that's willing to bring that
Oh,
up.
so does anyone want to go?
Yeah.
That's a different question.
No,
Yeah, I mean, want to,
Yeah.
yes, I want to. Am I able to realistically?
No, I meant
No.
want to and is able to go.
Yeah.
I mean, a letter would be better. I mean, you can go up, if you're gonna do anything, if you wanna do a letter, you can do it, you can read your letter, you can make a statement, but a letter would have.
But I would like the letter to come from us, all of us. Even,
Unless we can zero in on
Write it up.
some specifics.
Write it up. Yeah, then we
I
can-
mean, I can write it up right now.
Well, go ahead.
Please.
Okay, so.
Please do. I would love to see a draft.
FMCB,
Well, not literally right now.
no, I meant literally right now. Could be one sentence. Has the FMCB or general manager hired somebody to look into the safety report and get a report back? It doesn't have to be even in good English. I'd say, it can be emailed. It doesn't have to be typed up or anything. Are people willing for that kind of half-assed?
It's a start.
No, nothing half-assed, so.
Okay,
yeah.
Dean.
Well, drafting, I mean, I'm all in favor of drafts that are,
But I want it to go
HA.
in now, not the next ROC meeting. That's another
Okay.
month away.
No, it'll be the next rock meeting that's gonna happen.
Well, that's not
yeah.
good enough.
Well, I mean, over the holidays, I don't think there's another FMCB meeting this month.
Yeah,
It'll be, whenever it is, it'll be before the ROC meeting.
yeah, before the rock meeting,
Yeah.
And generally, we.
So are we not willing to have that half-assed letter go?
Not this month, so we'll do it next month. Yeah.
Okay, then maybe I'll send a letter myself.
You can
Oh, please, yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to say member of the ROC, but not
Absolutely.
speaking for
Oh,
them.
yeah, please
Yes,
do.
yes, by all means.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming from my viewpoint, I think we'd be better served to make some specific recommendations or to have at least some areas, some of the report areas where we can tell the FMCB or tell the general manager, hey, these are areas where we either have particular concern or particular interest, and we want to do more research, we want to be more involved. It's fine if we can, no, not fine, it's even better if we can come up with a recommendation letter, but short of that, I think it's just as, maybe not valuable, that's the wrong word, but just as useful for us to make a statement saying, we are watching on these particular areas, please let us help.
Well, another thing that they mentioned, and Al, it's not tricky for, he had mentioned it himself when he visited with us, and that the legislature had, mandated that they have a lot of meetings. I mean, was it 3 a month or something? There's a large number of meetings, and they had mentioned that in the report. I think they were going to, in the next iteration of the FMCB, because their lifespan is ending, that they were suggesting that there be fewer meetings per year, maybe just 2 a month or something like that. Now, I think that's okay. What I would hate to see come out of this report, though, is a reduction in the transparency, that we're getting, on the notion that we're too busy, to let the public know what's going on, because, I just don't know if, because they have to, it's not like the same people are showing up at every meeting, they do have a schedule, and so I don't know to what extent that people had to present at a meeting really affected their ability to actually do their job. I think people are overworked here, but I think that overwork comes from just too little support staff. I can see reducing meetings, but let's be careful not to really reduce transparency. I think you can reduce the meetings and still keep the transparency, because I found the reports to the FMCB, to be helpful for us to understand what's going on.
Mind if I quote that one paragraph? It's hard to find things in this particular PDF, it's not indexed, but I just found it.
You're the chair.
It's very quick. It's simply, again, quoting from the report, also obvious is that the mandate requiring the FMCB to have such frequent meetings has had a detrimental effect on the organization. By legislation, this board is required to meet in session 36 times a year. Staff preparation to meet the needs of the board is overwhelming and leaves staff little, if any, time to tend to the operation or the maintenance of the system. It's unquestionable that this mandate is causing staff to, quote, take their eye off the ball, end quote, and contributes to safety not getting the time and attention it requires.
And, and I don't need to read the report to see if anything in that is substantiated. When I hear language like that, it's just like, okay, you just want to buy, you want me to buy this as axiomatic. So I need to go through and see if we can quantify, the extent to which this is having a detrimental effect on folks.
Good point. Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's an interesting angle. And from a practical standpoint,
It's unquestionable. It's unquestionable.
I don't like the word, use the word unquestionable either, but I've seen it in other organizations before, that you spend so much time on PowerPoint presentations, about a quarter of the time on actually fixing the problems. What's more important, the problem circumstance or doing it? It's balance, right? Because you need, to your point, you need transparency, and you need to educate those who are in positions of authority on what the issues are. But it's that fine line of finding that sweet spot of reporting on the basis, useful information in a good format, and spin your wheels on presentations while, fiddling over burns. If they're calling that out as a need, or as a challenge, I'd be supportive of them reducing the number of FMCB meetings.
But not reducing the transparency.
I think it depends on how you define reducing the transparency.
That's true.
If they're only going to if they're gonna go from meeting 36 times a year to 24 times a year, I'm doing my math correctly, they're gonna produce 12 less PowerPoints, they'll have 12 less presentations. Is that a reduction in transparency or not?
No, not necessarily. I think the transparency is in how the meetings are conducted.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, but to your point though, I do want to see the same amount of information, and so, whether that's fewer PowerPoints that are longer, or a way of presenting the data, that gives me the same information, in fewer, pages in the, fewer slides in the PowerPoint, it's fine, but I do want the same amount.
It sounds like what referring from that paragraph saying is that we've turned a portion of the MBTA into a report generating machine. And they didn't do that they didn't add the staff to support the needs of the board. They deputized members of staff and said, congratulations, you're on deck, this is your new second job.
Yeah.
And the question is the balance, has the second job become the first job, and the first job, to the first job detriment?
But I think the issue though, when they started up though, is that, this kind of reporting should have been done. And so, to your point, if they didn't staff up to meet it, there's a problem. If the current staff is overworked doing it, and they can't actually do their job, then it's a problem. But I would like to see that quantified, because that statement, is fairly nebulous. It's not stated on anything. I need to read it to see if they substantiate it. And as I said, when you tell me that something's unquestionable, it's like, okay, you're trying way too hard here, and to stop me, from questioning what you said. That's like, tell me not to question something, you might as well just put a big question mark all over stuff. So I'd like to be, and what's interesting too is that they said that Keolis was not affected. I guess they looked at Keolis and saw Keolis as relatively safe. And now maybe I'm doing apples and oranges here. So it's that grain of salt. When we went to Keolis this last time, they had a room that was so loaded up with reports that I salivated and pretty much begged to get those reports. Linda said, no, never going to happen. But then, it's just the amount of analysis they had on so much stuff. It was just a pleasure to read it, to get a sense of the kind of metrics that are out there that are measurable, and they're doing it, and apparently they're doing it not to the detriment of safety as far as they were examined by this group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is going back to the earlier conversations and comparing ourselves to other systems, is our safety record for heavy rail versus subway versus light rail versus bus, are they proportionate to their peers is the correct question. I would guarantee I would be shocked if it didn't align in every major metropolitan area that's running all forms of transportation, that the safest is always heavy rail, followed by subway, followed by light rail, followed by bus. It would blow my mind if somebody else, if the order was flipped on one of those.
I think that is later in the report, but in the report, I haven't gotten to that part yet. But before I forget to mention just two things about it. First, about the FMCB and the staff time and everything to present. I think there's a cultural element at work there as well, where as observed by the safety board, by the safety review board, the culture of safety and being comfortable to speak up is not present, and there's a fear of retaliation. I think one could say that that's extending also to the time requirements involved with presenting the FMCB, where someone who might otherwise be doing boots on the ground safety review feels like they can't say no to the FMCB. So and also they don't feel like they can speak up and say, hey, I really don't have the time to give you this report. How about if I actually do some safety implementation instead of generating PowerPoint? I feel like that's a cultural element where it's not allowed to be said.
Well, I mean, I don't know, I mean, who's gonna tell the person, you know, that's ultimately in charge that I'm not gonna do what you asked me to do?
Well, maybe not, I'm not going to, but maybe say, I've got this amount of time, I can actually do some safety implementation or safety operations, or I can report on it, or I can do a little bit of both, but I can't, no, I'm just putting it out as a possibility. And the other quick thing was, what is the audience supposed to be for the FMCB? In other words, are people spending, according to this report, more time than they ought to be, or more time than they have available to report to the FMCB because they know that the FMCB is broadcast and it's viewable by everybody and they're on the spot, and have we turned the FMCB into a three-ring circus inadvertently where it's lost some of its actual utility because people are just playing to the camera not in a literal sense, but no.
No, it's the case. No, I mean, the audience for the FMCB reports are the FMCB.
Yeah.
And they're transparent to us because because of open meeting laws for one thing, and also one of their mandates was to be transparent, because that was everyone was upset by how the team was functioning in 2015 because there was 90 inches of snow in 3 weeks, and the system didn't work well in those circumstances. And as I said in our meeting, it's like, I'm glad that we had that FMCB as a result of that because we found other issues. But if we get 90 inches of snow in 3 weeks, the system's not going to work. It's just not going to work. How much money you put in, you're not going to work with 90 inches of snow in 3 weeks. And so with the safety thing, I'm glad they did it. They found some stuff. I'm not sure if some of the issues that we had with the railroads was like operator error. And so is there a culture that leads to bad operators? Maybe so. I need to read through the report and see if they talk about that. Certainly early on when we had cell phones, we realized that you could tell people all you wanted, don't use your cell phone, but until you took them away, they were going to use their cell phones. The DPW or DPU took care of that. But I don't think it's because people are playing to the FMCB, that they're not doing their job.
Okay.
All right, it's quarter after, unless someone is desperate to say something more about the safety report, let's move to the next item, subcommittee reports.
Well, I'll have to report the future in this case, because our meeting's on Thursday.
So there's not one for CIF?
Yeah, you'll get two in January.
Oh, that's an unusual situation.
Yeah, it kind of happens in December, now that we switched the finance committee, to the third Thursday of the month. It won't happen anymore though, because now that everything's on Tuesdays. It won't happen anymore.
Okay. I'd forgotten that you made it the third Thursday.
So what may happen, I did the calendar, so I don't think we had to bump up the meeting in December next year. I can't remember. If anything, we'll have to advance the meetings by a week in order to accommodate the holiday, the meeting that takes place in December.
And then for marketing, communications, and operations, an awful lot overlapped with what we just spoke about.
Yep. I did take a note that Dave Carney also seemed to be interested to hear was that there's a particular intersection at L and Broadway, which if the light timing could be varied, not even with the implementation of,
TSP.
yes, transit signal priority, even just with Boston Transportation just manually adjusting the light cycle and just changing it and leaving it changed, there was the thought that the routes 7 and 9 would be tremendously improved. Again, just from one intersection, from making one timing change. I believe I saw Dave Carney take that note, but I don't know if he has any ability to actually make contact with BTD people to do that. I don't know if it's an action item for us. We kind of ran out of time at the end of talking about that, but I didn't take a note about an action item. I think,
We can ask him next month.
okay, if he's there.
Yeah.
What
You
was
got
that
it?
intersection again?
I took down,
Broadway and L Street.
yeah, Broadway and L Street intersection, just that one particular one for the Route 7 and 9. And the theory was that it could be a huge improvement for those two routes.
I thought he had said that there had been some interaction with BTD that just wasn't fruitful. I thought, I asked
Yeah, but he
him.
may have an idea that maybe we can, or somebody, he may,
Yeah.
we'll ask him again.
And I can't remember if the context that he was talking about was about transit signal priority or ongoing.
I think
My
it was
understanding
timing, I think
was
what you
about
said.
reliability, that if you missed it, you had a 3-minute wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, the route map there, because in my mind, the 7 and 9 actually cross, so I don't know how you would fix that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we actually pulled up.
Because the 9 goes up Broadway, right, and then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine goes, I
Seven comes up
thought
7th Street, the
10
turn-
goes
7th right
over
down.
too, but I'm not sure. The 7, I've never seen the 7, but I catch it at, well, I usually catch it at, not L Street,
I'm gonna get
K Street. I don't
I'm getting the
have,
4 and 7 confused.
so I think the 10 goes there too.
Yeah, it's funny, after all the time that we spent with maps and things up on the big screen at that subcommittee meeting, I don't think we pulled up L and Broadway and the Route 7 and 9.
Yeah, no, 10
Maybe
goes
next
on, crosses, starts at City Point, goes down Broadway and crosses L Street. So I think he got confused, so I don't think the 7 goes there.
I forget who originally brought that up. It was only one,
Here's
all of us were there except for Craig.
It is the.
Who brought this up originally, do you remember?
There's a 9 too.
Hard to imagine that already getting bus routes confused.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, that's, well, both of them.
you know, between him and Belcher.
Yeah, maybe it was Jonathan.
Those two are
okay.
going to get routes confused. I mean, so if
No.
there's any confusion, it's in the routes reported.
Just South Station to,
You don't have the 7 there.
no, I don't have the 7, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think I have the 7.
Right, this is Broadway now,
Yep.
and so it's this.
Oh, I have the
Yeah,
7.
it's right.
Here's the 7.
I don't know why, it was, in my head, the 7, 7 and 9 cross each other, so how can you fix a light where they're?
It's not the big cross, it's the base.
You can fix one, and you screw the other.
I don't ride single digit buses. It's only 16 above for me.
So the 7 signal bang left, and the 9's going straight across.
Well, I'll bring them at the next meeting and we can confront them and say,
And then they come back, maybe when they're coming back in the direction? I don't know. This is exciting, but
Hey, that's not gonna impress it. No, you're learning stuff. It's fine, you know.
So there was, oh, sorry.
No, I have more to say when you're done about the meeting.
Okay, I have more to share about the whole Kyoto's locomotive hazardous sand thing, so why don't we cover what you were to say?
Sure, I'll keep it brief, so.
No, you don't have to, it's only 20 after.
All right, regarding the retaliation thing, there seems to not be a correlation between how long someone has been at the MBTA and their likelihood of fearful about retaliation. So I was wondering if newer employees might feel more afraid to comment the employees that have been there for a while. And apparently that wasn't the case. I mean, and so it seems to be a hard problem to solve. It wasn't apparent where, that fear was coming from, because as far as the report that we got was that there wasn't any active, there wasn't any apparent active behavior on the part of managers that would lead people to be concerned about retaliation. But apparently this is not something that the report made up. This is clear that fear exists. It's just not clear where it's coming from. And once again, there doesn't seem to be a correlation between how long someone has been at the MBTA and how much they feel it. So I think it's going to be a tough nut to crack. I think it's going to require some way of honestly surveying people. And I really would like to see them work on that, and really try to get to the bottom of it. Because I think there would be a lot of benefit, not only from parts of the team that they studied, but from parts of the team that didn't study.
Yeah, for the benefit of people who might be watching, or for Craig's benefit, I've been trying to come up with a good analogy, and so far the best I have is it's as if somebody is saying, oh, no, I don't want to hit you with that stick. No, I don't want to get hit with the stick. And you're like, I don't have a stick. I'm not carrying a stick. You're like, yes, you are. You've got a stick. I don't want to hit you with the stick. You're like, I don't own a stick. Yes, you're going to hit me with a stick. I know you're going to hit me with a stick. But there's no stick. There's no evidence of a stick. But the person is convinced that they're going to hit with a stick.
Well, thank you for that analogy. That really...
A little drama as well. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, that's akin to what was in the report. There's a fear of retribution where there was apparently no evidence, none of any actual retribution for being in specifics of being a safety whistleblower.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, the reason I said it that way is that I'm afraid with an analogy like that, it kind of really ridicules the person that has the fear. And so we don't want to ridicule them for the fear that they have. There wasn't a sensation or a sense, and what we heard was that, they are ridiculous or somehow, just kind of...
Oh, yeah.
That analogy just kind of made them seem like they're kind of idiots,
okay.
Because when you're saying there's no stick here, you're saying, oh, man. But in their minds, there is something going on. I think we really need to get to the bottom of it. It's like, what is it? Is it that in the case, it's like we were told that there is a certain part of the system that is very regimented. And so if people are feeling that, because in some cultures, like some white collar cultures, like people feel as if they can't take vacation time because they're going to be compared to other people who aren't, and so they won't get, and so it's not anything that, management is saying, like, you can't take vacation time, but because the culture is such that other people aren't, now there's that sense of like, I can't take vacation time, so it's a little more complex, I think, and so...
Yeah, you're right, okay, for the record, I apologize if I was casting aspersions or, yes, I was being very oversimplistic, and I was not trying to hint at anyone being irrational.
You have nothing but intentions, and I really mean that.
Okay.
I hear you.
Well, I've got a motto, a confusing analogy is like a blue monkey.
Thank you for that.
Well, it's a confusing analogy. Yeah, right? Okay.
With no pun, you get...
No pun, no, it's just
no pun.
It's just a logic thing. So, yeah, so we talk about the sand elephant in the room.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come over and look at my laptop screen if you want, where I have photos from inside a locomotive. I didn't have these photos for the subcommittee meeting even 4 days ago.
Can you tell me about this thing?
Later, yes. Sorry for folks who are watching online, you're going to get some video of lots of people standing around looking at my laptop screen at some point. Well, I'm not sure if I can share these photos publicly, so these photos are for our use. I don't know if I can put them on electronically. If anyone was here, I'd be putting them on the big screen, but anyway, this is I don't know if I showed this on the other day. This is the actual packaging of the sand that is used in keyless locomotives.
Yeah, you did.
And for the record, on the video, I'm going to quote this bag from Holliston Sand Company in Slatersville, Rhode Island. Again, this is not anything to do with them, they're just a vendor, but on the bag it says, danger may cause eye respiratory irritation, may cause cancer by inhalation causes, damage to organs through prolonged or repeated exposure by inhalation.
Well, that's what minor silicosis.
Yep, this is silica-based sand, and it says, wash thoroughly after handling, call for medical attention if not well or uncomfortable. If inhaled, provide fresh air. Never breathe dust. Wear PPE prior to use. PPE is a personal protection equipment used in a well-ventilated area, store properly, closed container. That's on the package. The interior of a locomotive, in one particular case, looks like this.
I'm sorry.
There's sand all over the place. There's sand building up. There's
Can
sand.
you remind me where they're using this?
This is sand that is used for traction underneath the wheels of the locomotives. So that the condition of these particular locomotives is such that there's...
They feed it down, it's fed down to the wheels?
I don't...
And the wheels pick it up as they turn?
Exactly. It's basically dispensed, I don't know if it's automatic or manual or a combination of both, but it's essentially a pipe from a reservoir.
Yeah.
And when a valve opens, the sand is either pumped out pneumatically or just under gravity. I think it's pneumatically kind of sprayed out right in between the front of the driving wheel and maybe even other wheels on the locomotive so that there's added friction in a slippery situation. This sand, being extremely toxic, is not supposed to be anywhere near the engineer. It's certainly not supposed to be inside the cab. These locomotives have gaps present in many areas because of age and rust, and the sand is infiltrating in from apparently holes in the hopper of the locomotive. And as you can see, the sand is essentially omnipresent throughout the cab. I've had several people tell me that under conditions of running at speed, the sand is just blowing around. And you can see it piling up in the corners. You can see the picture of the fire extinguisher. Yeah, this is a seat. This is a bench seat in the locomotive cab that has this sand all over it. And the really compelling one is this. The fire extinguisher is barely even visible as red because it's coated with potentially carcinogenic sand. The issue with the protection devices, I've been told, is that they are being issued, the engineers are being issued not the correct type. They're being issued off-the-shelf masks, no different than what you'd use if you were sanding your walls at home, like off-the-shelf from like a Home Depot. And I was told that on not just several, but on many occasions, the masks were either out or they had to reuse the masks, which is not supposed to be proper, it's supposed to be disposable for a fixed amount of time. And on one occasion, I was told that an engineer was ordered to go out and run a trip without a mask, even though he questioned, "You're telling me to run this train without a mask?" And the answer came back, "Yes, you are being ordered to operate this trip, even though there's no mask available for you."
Why wouldn't the thing be cleaned, actually, at a certain, every trip that you get?
Yeah, but that's not the issue. The issue is that it's in the air and.
And it comes like skin.
The masks are not a good long-term solution anyway. They shouldn't have cracks and
Make it
holes in
fill the
the
holes
vehicle.
in the,
But if they do use masks on occasion, they gotta be tight. You know, if there's air gaps in them.
Right. But beyond just the inhalation issue, this is sand, silica dust, which is just blowing around. It's getting sucked in, it's infiltrating, the engineers are getting it all over them.
Yeah, but
What you do.
yeah, it's not really, it's not a chemical issue, right? It's a particle getting in, it's just lots and lots of particles getting in your lungs, and then if they're small enough, they could get in your bloodstream, but if you can see them, they're not that small.
Okay.
Is there any environmental concern with just putting that out on the tracks over time?
No, I don't think so. I mean, once it's settled, it's like a beach. I mean, but it's
a natural substance. It's just the same.
Yeah, it is.
The other thing is,
it is, but lots and lots of miners have.
no, it's a real, I would say the example where the other industry that's facing this right now, one of the byproducts of every kitchen wanting to have granite or composite.
Well, it's the same.
Countertops.
It's the same.
Is you're actually seeing an increase in cancer numbers amongst stonecutters.
Yeah, it's the same.
Because it's the same exact thing. You cut the stone, it kicks out the particulate. It itself, it's perfectly safe to have in your kitchen.
That's right.
There's nothing evil or contrived about what that substance is.
Yeah.
It's when it's in a microscopic form floating in the air and it gets out in your lungs don't know what to do other than to attack it. And that's what causes it.
Yeah, and for,
Precisely.
I mentioned, and I sent a paper to Stefan, there's a professor emeritus who's highly regarded at University of Vermont. Vermont has a lot of stone, a lot of quarry, a lot of sand, but they have a lot of cut stone too. And with silica, there's a lot of different forms. And so if you're in the industry, you know whether it's chrysotile or it's, it's like asbestos or it's cristobalite or that kind of thing. They have different characteristics with regard to occupational issues. It's unlikely to bother an engineer except in the extreme relative to someone who works in that industry. But it's still, it's something you got to take care of. It's just not something that should be left.
Why isn't the union getting involved? That seems to me a union issue.
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, and it shouldn't actually be on management to use discretion. Somebody with professional knowledge should just be saying, hey, this is what you have to do.
Right. Besides the health risks that are, well, I shouldn't say that are apparent. I should just say, besides the apparent health risks, not being an expert, I think I should preface it by saying there's apparent health risks based on what I've been told, what I'm seeing. The general public is not at risk at all because this is confined to the very front of the train. There's, I would say, as close to zero as is possible to imagine getting into any coach. So zero impact on the customer, but the impact on the customer has been, I don't know if it continues, has been present in the fact that there have been locomotive engineers who have been refusing to operate the trains, which has caused last-minute cancellations and or equipment changes, which have caused delays. And I've been told of I believe at least 2 occasions where a locomotive engineer didn't have a mask available, and even though it was coming in from the outbound, they still had to operate in the locomotive cab in order to get it out of the yard and then go up to the platform. They refused, and they had to call in a supervisor from Keolis, some kind of a superintendent, in order to get the train out of the yard, back up to the platform, at which point the engineer took over because they were operating from the control cab, not on the locomotive. So that was a very long-winded way of saying the impact to the customers is not zero because it's causing delays and cancellations, and I don't know if that is going to improve. If Keolis decides that the union is to be, I'll restart that. If Keolis decides to agree to the terms that are being proposed by either individuals who are union members or the union, I'm not sure which it is, or both, they might Keolis might pull all of those locomotives until they can be serviced to stop the problem once and for all. If that happened, we would be down basically a third of the fleet of locomotives, and it would be chaos. I don't know if that's realistic. I don't know if Keolis has any plan to do that or rent locomotives. This is kind of still unfolding because I only found out about this whole issue with the stand literally Thursday of the past week, so 5 days ago.
Do you know who else might have been notified or consulted about this? I mean, for example, Department of Public Health Environment Division?
I heard third-hand information that OSHA and FRA have been contacted, but I'm not sure if that's gotten any traction. Although, of course, choice of words, sorry.
I thought
No, I didn't want
He's not gonna say that.
I thought the OSHA was not involved in transportation. In terms of they don't come in when we had the issue with the diesel buses. It was not OSHA. It was the,
DPU?
I forgot. Yeah, it was a State Department that did it.
That would be, DPU is the Massachusetts State Department.
Yes.
That's right. So how did this story get out?
I was contacted.
Oh, so this is.
People came to me personally and said, "You've got to look into this, Stefan." And I said, "Look into what's going on?" And then I got the details, and I said, "We need to bring this up in a public forum, as we're doing tonight."
Yeah, all right. Well, then, so what's the next step, as far as you're concerned?
My next step, I think for this committee, is to gather more information, which obviously is primarily on me, and bring it to our next marketing operations communications subcommittee. And if I don't have any information on a resolution in any form by the next subcommittee, then I'll draft some letter very strongly worded to Keolis management or MBTA management or whoever we think is appropriate.
Both.
How about DPU?
Sure.
All three.
I mean, yeah, I'm not going to rule out anything. I just think because of the holidays, because I've only been aware of this for 5 calendar days, I'm still collecting information. There may be some parties involved that are reaching out to media outlets. I'm not exactly sure of.
I just think it's a union thing. That would be, if I were
Yeah.
that union, they should be out there fighting.
I'm still collecting information, but as with anything that's this serious, especially coming on the heels of the safety report for MBTA released a week ago today, I felt like I owed it to the Keolis employees who came to me, and with the seriousness of this, I felt like it was worthy of us spending time talking about it tonight as we did the subcommittee. And so, like I said, I don't think there's any action that we can take at this point other than to be inquiring of all available sources, whether it's official or unofficial, and we'll convene our standard subcommittee with all the information we can gather the second Tuesday of January. That's a note leading into a reminder for the
January
calendar.
14th.
I believe so. I don't know.
14th.
Yeah, so second Tuesday in January, our next subcommittee meeting, and at that point, I think we'll be ready and able to take an action on a letter or what we decide.
Or maybe by that time, the union's gotten their act together. and-
Yeah.
Well, glad you reached out to us, is there anything specific you want any of us to do? I mean, now or later, you can let me know, I mean, right now, I have no idea what I would do, but if you tell me to do something, I'll do it. Think about it.
I will think about it. Nothing comes to mind right now. I just realized I did forget to share what you sent me to the group mailing list. So I'll do that on the way home.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, Wade was very generous with his time and wrote up some important points that he wanted me, and I did share with some people at Hewlett, some of the employees at Hewlett who are working with this issue, to do with inhalation risks, mask specifications, and a research paper. Thank you. Yeah, so I did share that information with many of the Hewlett people, and I just forgot to put it to a mailing list. But thank you again for that, Wade. That was really excellent.
Cool. Well, that's
All right,
good.
thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you reached out to us. Cool.
Yeah, and thank you for, the Keolis people who came to me.
Yeah.
I hope we can do justice
I also too.
to their concerns.
Well, you did good job getting the pictures here presented.
Thanks.
As usual.
Yeah, I would second that.
Thanks very much. Next on the agenda is minutes, then external meetings and open new business.
I've said this on.
Yep, I didn't get a chance to send the minutes to the rest of the group, I think.
Yeah,
You sent me
I
the-
thought next meeting was gonna be the following week, but then I realized that you guys have moved it over early.
Yeah.
So I'll get it to you end of week early, start of next week.
Yeah, so I did get from MJ the minutes for October,
November should be.
and they're going to come out soon.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So,
Good luck with
Yeah, so-
your,
Oh, thank
with
you.
your life.
Appreciate it.
waiting it forward to us.
Way home?
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Well, here, I'll just do it right now.
Yeah.
I've got the technology in my pocket. I'll
There you
send the minutes.
Why wait, right? We can do it right now.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable wanting to approve them.
I move that we don't approve any minutes until next week's meeting.
Yeah, but just to kind of send them, because
Yeah.
tomorrow is as good as next month.
Okay. October 22nd minutes just sent to the mailing list.
Anything people want to bring up about external meetings?
Well, I know I'm biased, but I think the last MPO meetings have just been really spectacular in terms of content. Amy Clark, we did another report on the future of the curb, and that has some nice implications for what can be done with transit, because we essentially there's kind of going along with his report about central business districts. If we can get businesses to realize that lots fewer people drive to shop and use the curb than they think is the case, then any resistance to taking parking for SOVs out of the curb, and using it for other things, we should feel confident that we can push that without doing any damage to businesses, and so better use out of that curb space. There's just been a lot of good reports. I suggest that you go to the MPO's site, click on the calendar for that date. They're on Thursdays, usually, well, not, you're on Thursdays.
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks for the most part, and you'll find something interesting there, we had Kate White come to talk at the last RTAC meeting. She talked about congestion and climate, and really made it clear that she's really open to talking to RTAC and continuing a dialogue. The UPWP, they're accepting proposals for studies from anyone. So if you have some ideas about something you'd like to do a study, you can submit that on your own. If you just want to send me a skeleton of an idea and talk with me about it, to flesh it out, I'll be happy to flesh it out in text and send that along for you. Just try to make it easy for you to get your study. And don't worry about the deadlines. All right. So whenever you think of something, pass it on.
Have there been recent UPWP subcommittee meetings?
No, those aren't going to kick in.
For a while?
Yeah, they probably won't kick in until like February.
Okay.
But we are doing revisions to the criteria for selection of TIP projects, and that's a big deal. Actually, Matt Genova was in here talking with us about it, and at the time, they were planning on trying to roll out the new criteria for this round of TIP project selection, but it became apparent really fast that that wasn't going to be enough time. And so they're really going to do a lot more work on it in preparation for using that criteria in the next cycle. And so they're going to be focused a working group on that. And that's going to precede the next appeal meeting, which is coming up on Thursday. And that was going to be good. Not so much that focus group, I know that's going to be good. But that next appeal has a presentation by Betsy Harvey, who does a lot of the equity analysis. This isn't only for TIP projects, but also for transit projects. And I'm sure this will have some bearing on the equity analysis that are done around fare increases for what kind of metrics would be really good to have in that equity analysis. And I'll say here, we haven't said it here, but she and Scott Peterson and John Cleek, who's now left, he spent about an hour and a half, all three of them, at once talking with me about the travel demand model and the analysis, how they did the equity analysis, and really took me through it step by step. And because my problem had been, whenever they give us these equity analysis reports, they just say there's no burden, no disparate impact or no disproportionate burden. We've done the analysis, and it's like, but I get nothing to substantiate that. It's like, I know that you all have integrity, and that you've done your analysis, but I have nothing to look at here to even verify that you've done it correctly. And like what inputs went into it, what you get out of it, into what numbers you get out of it. And so they took me through the whole process. It's quite the process, and so the next step is going to be, to try to make that more transparent, be more available to people, because I think if people really saw what they did, I'm sure some people have questions, and that's a scientific process. It's like if people look at it and go, well, why'd you do it this way? I think you do it a better way. Well, that's good. It's a scientific process, but I think also people just have a real appreciation for the amount of work that really goes into doing the analysis, the kind of inputs that we measure, to help us, determine, determine, what's the word for it? The input that helps us make decisions, So anyway, she's doing a presentation, and there's someone else that's going to be presenting on new possible metrics to be used. So that's coming up on Tuesday, on Thursday.
So just on this point, and I've been in one or two meetings over the years that Len's been in, so he probably knows this, but years ago, I went to 250 MPO meetings. And I was interested for a number of reasons because of Somerville and the Green Line and stuff like that. And I did get a couple complete data sets of the traffic they should be called transportation analysis zones, but they're generally referred to as traffic analysis zones. And they're in this region about 3 times as granular as a census tract, so they're pretty granular. The boundaries are drawn by transportation metrics, you know, that they're, in other words, the lines are, and then there's a relational table that gets them back to the census data. But the thing that had and service, I think, is intuitive to most people. You know that you got to check on the service and the service needs of different populations. The thing that has always bothered me and has never been reconciled is that when they do an exposure analysis, they aggregate all of the data in the region for the EJ population and then the non-EJ population. So in other words, they only do it at 100%. And the really large disparities are granular. You know, if you're living in a TAZ in Sullivan Square where there's 800,000 vehicle miles per square mile, that's an issue. If you're living in a TAZ in Chelsea where most of the trucks are, yeah, it's only a third of the size of a census tract, but it's really the top 5% exposures that are where the disparities are. It's not in aggregating the whole 3.5 million people and then looking at 500,000 of them versus 3 million of them. And I brought that up over and over again over 15 years. And, you know, I'm part of a group that has shown the environmental health impacts of those exposures to be statistically significant. And I have never gotten anywhere with that. You know, I might bring it up again on Thursday. But that's where the issues are. And the issues are at the smallest layers of granularity in the region.
Yeah, you know, yes, you do bring up Thursday. So the working group meets at 9 o'clock. So you have 2 opportunities to meet in the working group and then at the full MPO meeting, which will be an hour later.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, I actually saw the agenda this week for some odd reason. Maybe they're getting email to our list. But thank you for the report.
Sure.
Thanks, Len. I had a quick thing I wanted to say about the FFCB that I saw that not this past joint one, but the previous one, a huge chunk of their agenda was about bus issues. And like going from me and other people saying you need to pay more attention to buses, not just buying them, but how they run, to spending much of the meeting talking about it. Like to me it was a sign that they're coming around.
Did they, do you want to say anything about what they
I
talked
haven't-
about it?
No, it was mostly, so I haven't been able to look at the materials yet, but just the fact that the agenda
Right.
had so much bus information on it, to me is a sign of
I think,
progress.
I may be totally wrong, I think there's somehow 64% rings in my head that somehow buses are not meeting their schedules on 64%.
Oh, the reliability numbers
Right.
are in the 60s
Yeah, so that's where I got that 64%.
against a service standard of someplace in the 70s. Yeah.
Well, actually, another thing I went to was they did the 1-year anniversary of the Future Transportation Report. And this was yesterday. And Town Transportation of Massachusetts did that, and so that was good. Stephanie Pollock actually showed up, and she had to run out after she talked because that was a joint meeting that they had, and so the big thing there was that when the whole Real Vision thing came out of a recommendation by the Future Transportation, and they also focus a lot on climate, so those are two things that they feel that they are making some headway on. There's lots more to do. As you may know, T for Mass, Transportation Massachusetts is doing this big push to get more funding for transportation. I mean, for transit in particular, transportation in general, transit in particular. And so I went to the launch of that. That was like back in October. And I saw Chris and told him that if he wanted to talk with us and or RTAC, that we would have them at whatever time they thought was strategically positive for them, meaning that sometimes you kind of want to spread out, meaning when you appear, so as to keep the momentum going on your endeavor. And I think clearly that we stream here, so that would be one way to keep your message going. And so he told me to get back to him, so I'll get back to him with the January, February rock meetings. So we'll go from there.
Did other folks go to the Quincy Market, basically the Boston Globe meeting that the secretary was at, and Shirley, and one of the legislative leaders, the Transportation Joint Committee? That was quite a good panel, I have to say. They had two panels. The first one was for journalists, and the second one was those kind of thought leaders, and they were excellent. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but they were excellent. The other thing I've been to, I'm not sure it was in the last, I think it was in the last one, was the presentation of Harvard Alston, and I think that would be worth a feature at one of our meetings. So Harvard Alston has a $1 billion turnpike shuffle going on right there.
The Alston Multimodal Interchange.
Yeah. I think that's worth some of our attention sooner rather than later because it's current. And for me, there are two issues. They're basically crushing the highway into the back side of it, which is fine to get it out of the middle of that usable land. But it's going to basically be the demarcation line between the Harvard Alston project and the neighborhoods around. So it's an intense amount of transportation. And T for Mass has, and Transit Matters actually has some concerns about 4 tracks versus 3 tracks, and others may have been following that, and that is an issue. But they've got the regional bicyclists right up against the stacked turnpike. I mean, literally, like 5 feet from the stacked turnpike, instead of like trying to put the bicyclists on the Charles River, like the Dudley White paths, or like the community path going through Somerville, and in kind of a green reserve. I mean, it's nuts it's nuts.
Isn't the Bicycle Coalition, though, getting after them for that?
Yeah, the meeting I was at Brighton, one of the high schools in Brighton, and it had a great old auditorium, and the lights went off after the first 4 of us spoke. So I spoke, Steve Kaiser spoke, Fred Salvucci spoke, and Ann Lusk spoke, who teaches transportation planning at Harvard Medical School, and I help her with the environmental exposures part of that course. But that's just crazy, honestly.
If we go to all EVs, would that be an issue?
Yeah, it's still going to be an issue because clean vehicles are, at this point, brand new clean vehicles are 1/2 tire wear, brake wear, and lube oil, and 1/2 tailpipe.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get rid of the first 3 of those with regard to exposures.
Yeah. Well, you can lessen the brake wear in certain areas
Yeah.
if you design for reducing congestion.
Yeah, but once those vehicles go out of tune, it shifts back to tailpipe.
Yeah,
the tailpipe's lower,
but tire wear, and there's a certain isn't there a certain amount of also like just asphalt pulverization? There's a small amount of.
There's some nasty stuff in there.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot less than it used to be, but it's an issue.
Well, thanks for the intro. So I was just wondering.
The other thing that I'd like to bring up in that context is, they're wanting to bring the Worcester commuter rail to Alston and then over to Kendall and to North Station. And I think it's great to hook Worcester up with Kendall through Harvard, Alston. Worcester has a great collection of small universities, including a great medical school, which not too many people know about. But Worcester Tech's interested in Clark and Holy Cross and so on. But to capture the Grand Junction for the benefit of one city, when the Grand Junction goes up through MIT and Sullivan and crosses the Mystic and it hits that whole north side that has way too little economic development. It goes through Chelsea, it gets over to East Boston, where those mega projects are, and then it gets to the Blue Line much closer to the north side of Boston. And you can see the disparity in opportunity if you consider how many trips per day are on the red line, how many on the orange line, how many on the green line. Those average 200,000 trips a day. The Blue Line is a gorgeous facility. Look at how many trips per day there are there. It's like 60,000. It's pathetic. And that is proportional to the lack of connection of the core economy to the north side, including Lynn. And so to capture that Grand Junction just for Worcester-Harvard connection, I mean, Harvard wants to get to Kendall too, but to capture that for that one corridor, when we have gateway cities in every direction, and to not use that existing Grand Junction corridor to connect in the north side of the Mystic. And by the way, almost all the urban opportunity zones are in the lower Mystic in that corridor. So Chelsea's there, Charlestown is the largest economic development part of Boston's opportunity zones, Medford is there, Everett is there, Malden is just up the Malden River a hair, Somerville is there. It is like 80 to 90% of the opportunity zones in the core are in that corridor, which has Grand Junction completely not used.
All right, so we're a bit past 7.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Finish up.
Well, I'll just give you, this is like a 30-second hopes and aspirations. After the rail vision proposal was adopted by the FMCB, where the initial electrification would be Fairmont and the eastern route from North Station to Lynn.
Right.
My sort of secret hope, and actually thinking about it in terms of operations reality, is that since MBTA Keolis doesn't have any electrified maintenance facility north side, but the FMCB has said do electrification from Lynn to North Station.
Right.
There's already Amtrak heavy maintenance facility right adjacent to the south side, just overnight storage yard. I'm thinking that a reasonable extension of the electrification would be from North Station to Grand Junction into South Station to leverage the existing electrified maintenance facility. And they don't have to do anything with BET for electrified vehicles.
Right.
And as a bonus, hey, Grand Junction becomes electrified, which is better for that whole corridor anyway.
Yeah, that's the biggest opportunity in the corridor.
Yeah, so basically, the long story short is, if Lynn to North Station gets electrified, I think it's more of a no-brainer that the Grand Junction be as part of that plan than for any other reason to electrify Grand Junction.
Yeah, if you've already hooked up Grand Junction to North Station via Kendall, that project's dead.
Maybe.
I follow you, I'm sure it all makes sense.
What?
I do follow you in that.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, if we had somebody go to the Department of Alston, we can throw some slides.
Cool. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you guys so much.